From the moment I could understand my father's words, I knew he'd always longed for a son. Instead, he got me, Jennifer, and my younger sister. Dad was an ophthalmologist, a damn good one too. But he had bigger dreams. When I was about 5, he opened his first eyeglass store. I remember the day clearly, the smell of fresh paint, the gleaming displays, and Dad's proud smile as he cut the ribbon. As the years passed, Dad's business grew. He took out a loan, opened a lens production facility, and before we knew it, he had a chain of stores across the state. By the time I hit high school, Dad's company was a proper empire, 30 stores and a high-tech manufacturing plant. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make Dad proud. While other kids were hanging out at the mall or going to parties, I was nose-deep in textbooks or helping out at one of Dad's stores after school. Every day after school, I'd head to the store, learning everything I could. How to handle customers, manage inventory, even basic bookkeeping. I was determined to prove myself. My sister, on the other hand, couldn't care less about the family business. She was always off in her own world, paintbrush in hand, creating these wild, colorful masterpieces. Dad tried to get her interested, but it was like trying to teach a fish to climb a tree. Jennifer, my dance teacher, said one day after class, "You've got real talent. Have you ever thought about pursuing dance professionally?" I hesitated. Truth was, I loved dancing. The freedom, the expression, the pure joy of movement. But I pushed the thought away. "Thanks, Miss Davis, but I've got other plans." As high school came to an end, I applied to college for finance and management. Economics and finance didn't come naturally to me like dancing did. But I gritted my teeth and pushed through. Late nights, endless cups of coffee, and more spreadsheets than I care to remember. Meanwhile, my sister breezed through art school, met a guy, and got married right after graduation. To everyone's surprise, her new husband started working for Dad's company. The day I graduated college, I felt a mix of relief and determination. As I walked across that stage, diploma in hand, I could see Dad in the audience, grinning from ear to ear. This was it. I was ready to take on the family business. As I stepped off the bus in my hometown, the familiar sights and smells washed over me. It felt like nothing had changed, but everything was different. I was different. No longer the wide-eyed girl who left for college, but a woman with a degree and a purpose. Dad was waiting for me, leaning against his car with that proud smile I'd always longed to see. "Welcome home, Jen," he said, pulling me into a bear hug. "Ready to get to work?" I nodded, determination stealing my spine. "More than ready, Dad." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Dad started me off in accounting, dealing with primary documentation. It wasn't glamorous, but I threw myself into it with gusto. Every invoice, every receipt, every ledger entry was a step towards proving myself. Years passed, and I climbed the corporate ladder. Deputy Chief Accountant, that was my new title. I was helping Dad with budget planning now, feeling like I was finally making a real difference in the company. My brother-in-law, Tom, was rising through the ranks too. Dad made him head of the supply department, and man, did that guy know how to schmooze. Dad loved him, treated him like the son he never had. I tried not to let it bother me, focusing instead on my own work. But I couldn't help feeling a twinge of jealousy every time I saw them laughing together in Dad's office. Then came the day Dad called me into his office. My heart was pounding as I sat down across from him. "Jennifer," he said, his face serious. "I've been thinking. You've done great work in accounting, and I think it's time for a change." I held my breath, hoping against hope that this was it, the moment I'd been working towards all these years. "I'm making you manager of our retail chain," he said, smiling. "And Tom? He's going to be my deputy at the lens factory." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Manager of the retail chain? It was a step up, sure, but it wasn't what I'd been hoping for. And Tom, he was now second in command at the factory, the heart of our business. "Thanks, Dad," I managed to say, forcing a smile. "I won't let you down." As I left his office, I couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how hard I worked, I'd always be playing second fiddle to Tom. Weeks went by, and I threw myself into my new role. I was determined to prove that I could do more than just crunch numbers. But then, something strange happened. I was reviewing a new shipment of glasses when I noticed some discrepancies in the documents Tom had provided. The numbers didn't add up, and something about the quality felt off. "Hey, Tom," I said, catching him in the hallway. "Can we talk about these documents for the new shipment? Some things aren't quite clear." He barely glanced at the papers. "Everything's fine, Jen. You're probably just overthinking it." His dismissive tone rubbed me the wrong way. This wasn't just about me anymore, it was about the integrity of our business. I decided to dig deeper. I went to the head office and requested a quality check on the latest batch of lenses and glasses. Something wasn't right, and I was going to get to the bottom of it. I was sitting at my desk, reviewing the quality check results, when Dad burst into my office. His face was red, and I could practically see the steam coming out of his ears. "Jennifer," he bellowed. "Who gave you the authority to order quality checks? You're overstepping your bounds, young lady." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. I noticed some inconsistencies in the documents for the new shipment. I was just trying to. "To what?" he interrupted again. "To show everyone how smart you are? To undermine Tom's work?" His words stung. "No, Dad. I was trying to protect our company. If there's something wrong with the products..." "Enough." He slammed his hand on my desk, making me flinch. "You don't have the authority to give instructions to the company or arrange inspections. I'm the head of this company, not you. Do you understand?" With that, he stormed out, leaving me standing there, feeling small and stupid. For days after that, I went through the motions at work. I did my job, nothing more, nothing less. The passion I once had felt like it had been sucked out of me. Then, one evening, Mom called. "Jennifer, honey," she said, her voice excited. "Your father's decided to retire. We want to throw him a party, and I was hoping you could help organize it." I felt a mix of emotions, relief that Dad was stepping down, anxiety about what that meant for the company, and a petty part of me that wanted to refuse just to spite him. But in the end, the part of me that still yearned for his approval won out. "Sure, Mom," I said. "I'd be happy to help." As I planned the party, an idea struck me. Dad had always loved jazz. What if I could get his favorite band to play at the party? It would be expensive, sure, but seeing the look on his face would be worth it. I called Mom to run the idea by her, and she agreed enthusiastically. We decided to split the cost, I, Mom, and Sarah and Tom. I called Sarah next. "Hey, sis," I said. "I've got an idea for Dad's retirement party. What do you think about getting his favorite jazz band to play?" There was a pause on the other end. "I don't know, Jen," Sarah said hesitantly. "Sounds expensive. Let me talk to Tom about it." I waited anxiously for her response. Hours turned into days, and finally, Sarah called back. "Sorry, Jen," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "Tom says it's too expensive. We can't chip in." In the end, Mom and I split the cost ourselves. It was a stretch for my budget, but I was determined to make this party special for Dad. The night of the party arrived, and the venue was buzzing with excitement. The place looked fantastic, if I do say so myself. Soft jazz played in the background as guests mingled, waiting for the main event. As the evening progressed, the moment I'd been waiting for finally arrived. The lights dimmed, and the first notes of Dad's favorite jazz band filled the air. I held my breath, watching Dad's face. His eyes widened in disbelief, then filled with tears. He stood there, transfixed, as the music washed over him. I've never seen him look so genuinely happy. "I can't believe it," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "They're here. They're really here." I felt a warmth spread through my chest. This was the moment I'd been working towards. I opened my mouth to tell Dad it was my idea when Tom suddenly appeared at Dad's side. "Surprise, Dad," Tom said, clapping Dad on the shoulder. "Sarah and I thought you'd like this little treat." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I took a step forward, ready to set the record straight, when I felt a hand on my arm. It was Mom. "Jennifer, honey," she said quietly, her eyes pleading. "Let it go. Don't spoil the moment for your father." I wanted to argue, to shout the truth from the rooftops. But looking at Dad's happy face, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I swallowed hard and nodded, forcing a smile. As the night wound down, Dad took the stage for a speech. I perked up, hoping that maybe, just maybe, he'd acknowledge my role in organizing everything. "Family," Dad began, his voice thick with emotion. "Family is everything. And tonight, as I prepare to step away from the company I built, I'm filled with gratitude for the support you've all given me." I smiled, waiting for my name to be mentioned. "But more than that," Dad continued, "I'm filled with hope for the future. Hope that this company will continue to thrive for generations to come. And that's why I've made a decision. It's time to pass the torch." I straightened up, my pulse pounding in my ears. This was it. All those years of hard work were about to pay off. "Tom," Dad said, turning to my brother-in-law with a proud smile, "I'm making you the new CEO of the company." The room erupted in applause, but I couldn't hear it over the roaring in my ears. Tom? He was giving the company to Tom? "Not only that," Dad continued, oblivious to my shock, "but I'm also entrusting our entire chain of eyewear stores to Tom's capable hands." I felt like I was going to be sick. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a nightmare. After Dad's announcement, I approached him, my voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, what about me?" He looked at me, his expression a mix of pity and condescension that made my blood boil. "Jennifer, sweetheart," he said, patting my shoulder, "you're a woman. Which means you're a priori stupid and incompetent in management matters. You don't understand anything about running a company." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "But Dad, I've worked so hard. I dedicated my life to this company." He waved his hand dismissively. I know, and that's admirable. But let's face it, you've always been more interested in dancing, haven't you? Now you can pursue that without worrying about the company. Leave the business to those who can actually do it." Without another word, I turned and walked away. I grabbed my coat, ignored my mother's concerned calls, and stormed out of the restaurant. As the cool night air hit my face, I finally let the tears flow. A couple of hours later, I was already packing my bags. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to get away. Away from the family business, away from my father's crushing disappointment, away from Tom's smug face. My phone buzzed. It was my sister, Sarah. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Jen?" Sarah's voice was irritatingly chipper. "Where are you? Dad's looking for you. He wants to know when you're planning to serve the cake. Tom's got a sweet tooth, you know." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything that had happened, they were worried about cake? "Tell your husband to figure out the cake situation himself," I snapped. "He's the big boss now, isn't he?" I hung up before she could respond. With my bags packed and my resignation letter emailed to HR, I left town. I ended up in a city a few hours away, determined to start fresh. It wasn't easy at first. I landed a junior position at a large auditing firm. The work was challenging, but I threw myself into it with everything I had. No more trying to please anyone but myself. Years passed. I climbed the corporate ladder, earning a reputation as a skilled and dedicated auditor. The firm gave me increasingly difficult and interesting cases, trusting my judgment and expertise. And in the evenings, I danced. I found a studio near my apartment and started taking classes again. It felt like coming home, like rediscovering a part of myself I had buried for far too long. I barely spoke to my family during this time. Occasional calls with Mom, sure, but we kept things superficial. I didn't ask about Dad or the business, and she didn't volunteer any information. Life was good. I had a high-paying job I excelled at, a beautiful apartment in a nice neighborhood, and I was finally pursuing my passion for dance. I felt free, truly happy for the first time in years. Then, one evening, everything changed again. I was walking home from dance class, my body pleasantly sore from a challenging routine, when I saw her. Sarah was standing outside my building, looking lost and disheveled. "Jennifer," she called out, her voice trembling. "I need your help." "How did you find me?" I asked, my voice cold. Sarah looked down, ashamed. "Mom gave me your address." We need your help, Jen. Tom's in trouble. The company, it's being audited by the tax authorities. And your firm is conducting the audit." I felt a chill run down my spine. I had a feeling I knew where this was going, but I let her continue. "We need you to influence the results of the audit," Sarah pleaded. Just tell them everything's fine with the accounting. "Please, Jen. We're family." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you seriously asking me to commit fraud? To risk my career, my reputation, everything I built here?" Sarah nodded desperately. "I'll pay you $100,000. Please, Jen. We're desperate." The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Tom had screwed up, big time. And now they wanted me to cover for him, to jeopardize everything I'd worked for. "This conversation is over," I said, pulling out my phone. "If you ever suggest something like this again, I'm calling the police." Sarah's face crumpled. She placed a hand on her belly, and I noticed for the first time that she was pregnant. "Please, Jen," she begged. "Think of your niece or nephew. You wouldn't want them to grow up without a father, would you?" I felt a surge of anger. "Your pregnancy doesn't change the fact that your husband is a fraud," I spat. "Now leave, before I call the cops." Sarah's demeanor changed instantly. She started screaming, hurling insults at me, causing a scene right there on the street. Passers-by began to stare, some pulling out their phones. I'd had enough. Without another word, I turned and walked into my building, leaving Sarah screaming on the sidewalk. A month passed after Sarah's unexpected visit. I threw myself into work, trying to forget about the whole ordeal. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. One evening, as I was reviewing some files for a particularly complex audit, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment, I feared Sarah had returned. But when I opened the door, I was shocked to see my parents standing there. They looked older, more tired than I remembered. Dad, once the picture of confidence, now seemed small and defeated. Mom's eyes were red-rimmed, as if she'd been crying. "Jennifer," Dad said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can we come in? We need to talk." Hesitantly, I let them in. We sat in my living room, an uncomfortable silence stretching between us. Finally, Dad spoke. "We've come to ask for your forgiveness," he said, his voice breaking. "We've made terrible mistakes, and we've wronged you deeply." What followed was a confession that left me reeling. Tom, the golden boy, the son my father never had been running a massive scam for years. He'd been buying counterfeit lenses cheaply from South Asia and passing them off as expensive branded products through our chain of stores and pocketing the difference. He'd been siphoning money into offshore accounts for years. As they spoke, a memory surfaced. Years ago, when I'd noticed discrepancies in Tom's reports and tried to investigate. Dad had shut me down, accusing me of overstepping. Now, I realized just how right I'd been. The consequences were devastating. The subpar products were causing allergic reactions in patients. Lawsuits were piling up. The company that my father had built from the ground up, the legacy he'd been so proud of, was now teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. "We were blind," Mom said, tears streaming down her face. "We didn't want to see what was right in front of us." Dad reached out, tentatively taking my hand. "Jennifer, we know we have no right to ask this of you. But we need your help. The company needs you. Will you come back and take over? You're the only one who can save it now. I stood there, my parents' plea echoing in my ears. For a moment, I was tempted. The challenge of saving the company, of proving once and for all that I was capable, it was alluring. But then, like a flood, all the memories came rushing back. I remembered the disappointment in my father's eyes when I was born, not the son he'd always wanted. The countless times he'd dismissed my ideas and efforts. The way he'd so easily handed over the reins to Tom, calling me incompetent and stupid. The years I'd spent trying to prove myself, only to be cast aside. And now, here they were, asking me to swoop in and save them. To sacrifice everything I'd built for myself, all for a company that had never truly been mine. I looked at them, really looked at them. Despite the current crisis, they were still well off. They had money, they had resources. This wasn't about survival, it was about pride. My father's pride. His legacy. In that moment, I made my decision. No, I said, my voice firm and unwavering. They both looked shocked, as if they couldn't believe what they were hearing. I'm not ready to forgive you, and I don't want to communicate with you anymore. Where was all this concern when you were calling me incompetent? When you were handing over my birthright to Tom? You didn't think about me then, did you? My father tried to interject, but I wasn't finished. And now that you're in trouble, suddenly you remember me? Suddenly I'm capable enough to run the company? No, I won't do it. I won't sacrifice everything I built here to save your pride. My words hung in the air, heavy and final. I saw the hope drain from their faces, replaced by a mix of regret and despair. But it's your legacy too, my father said weakly. I shook my head. No, it's not. You made that very clear when you chose Tom over me. This is your mess. You clean it up. My mother was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. Part of me wanted to comfort her, but I steeled myself against it. I'd spent too many years trying to please them, trying to be what they wanted me to be. No more. I think you should leave now, I said, moving towards the door. They stood slowly, looking lost and defeated. As I watched them walk down the hallway, looking small and pitiful, a part of me ached. But a larger part felt free. For the first time in my life, I had put myself first. Months passed, and life moved on. I heard through the grapevine about the fallout from my family's crisis. Dad had taken the reins of the company once again. It wasn't easy, but slowly, he was rebuilding the reputation he'd spent a lifetime creating. Tom wasn't so lucky. Fraud, tax evasion, embezzlement, the list of charges was long. He ended up behind bars, his offshore accounts frozen, drowning in fines and debt. Sarah, now a single mother, had moved back in with our parents. I heard she was struggling to adjust to her new reality. Sometimes, I felt a pang of sympathy for her and her child, but I reminded myself that she had made her choices. As for me? Well, life had a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it. It happened one evening at the dance studio. I was lost in the music, my body moving freely to the rhythm, when I noticed him. A man with a camera, capturing the dancers' movements. There was something about the way he looked at the world through his lens that intrigued me. After class, he approached me. "Hi, I'm Alex," he said, his smile warm and genuine. "I hope you don't mind, but I got some great shots of you dancing. You're really talented." We got to talking, and before I knew it, hours had passed. Alex was a freelance photographer, with a passion for capturing moments of pure joy and freedom. As we parted ways that night, he hesitated for a moment. "Listen, Jennifer," he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "Would you like to grab coffee sometime? Or dinner, maybe?" I surprised myself by saying yes without hesitation. That was the beginning of something beautiful. Alex and I started dating, and with him, I discovered a side of myself I never knew existed. He encouraged me to be more open, more free-spirited. Through his eyes, I saw the world in a new light. Our relationship developed naturally, without pressure or expectations. We enjoyed each other's company, shared our passions, and supported each other's dreams. For the first time in my life, I was with someone who saw me for who I truly was, not for who they wanted me to be. One evening, as we walked hand in hand through the city park, Alex turned to me. "You know, Jen," he said, his eyes twinkling, "you've changed since we first met. You're more, you. More open, more free. It suits you." I thought about his words, about the journey I'd been on. From the dutiful daughter trying to prove herself, to the woman who stood up for herself, to now, someone who was learning to embrace life with open arms. "You're right," I said, returning his smile. "I do feel different. Freer. Happier." As we continued our walk, I reflected on the twists and turns my life had taken. The pain, the disappointments, the hard decisions, they had all led me here, to this moment. I wasn't the person I thought I'd be all those years ago, working in my father's company. I was someone better, someone true to herself.
Hey everyone, I'm Linda, 14 years old, top of my class, and dreaming of becoming a doctor. My nose was always buried in a book, much to my father's frustration. My mom and brother John encouraged my passion, but Dad, he had other plans. "Linda, dinner's ready," Mom called from downstairs. I reluctantly set down my biology textbook and joined them. Unable to contain my excitement, I blurted out, "Guess what? I won first place in the science fair." Mom's face lit up. "That's wonderful, honey," she said with pride. John reached over to give me a high five. "Way to go, sis." But Dad just grunted, barely looking up from his plate. I pressed, "Dad, did you hear me?" He finally looked up, his eyes cold. "What good will that do you?" he said flatly. "You'll be married in a few years anyway." The room went silent, and I felt a flush of embarrassment. Mom tried to interject. "Antonio, Linda's doing so well in school. We should be proud." "School?" Dad scoffed. "What a waste of time for a girl." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "But Dad," I stammered, "I want to be a doctor. I need school for that." With a loud bang of his fist on the table, he snarled, "Enough. No daughter of mine is going to waste her life with this nonsense." Tears pricked my eyes. "It's not nonsense, it's my future," I said, my voice shaking. Dad stood up, towering over me. "Your future is here, learning to be a proper wife and mother," he declared. Mom tried to step in. "Antonio, please." But Dad wouldn't listen. "In fact, I've decided you're done with school. Starting tomorrow, you'll stay home and learn what really matters." My world shattered. "No, you can't do that." "I can and I will," he growled. "This discussion is over." I ran to my room, slamming the door as Mom and Dad's arguing echoed through the house. John knocked softly. "Linda, you okay?" I didn't respond. How could I be okay when my dreams were crumbling? The next morning, instead of my school uniform, I was handed an apron. As I scrubbed floors and peeled potatoes, I couldn't stop thinking, this can't be my life. I won't let it be. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of my fight for my future. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. My days became a blur of cooking, cleaning, and feeling like a prisoner in my own home. But I refused to let my dreams die. One afternoon, as I was hanging laundry, I saw a familiar face approaching. It was Miss Rossi, my old science teacher. "Linda, how are you?" she called, but before I could respond, Mom joined us. "Miss Rossi, what a surprise." They chatted, and as they went inside, Miss Rossi slipped a folded piece of paper into my hand. Later, I opened it in my room. "Don't give up. Meet me at the park tomorrow at 3 p.m. The next day, I made an excuse to go to the market, but headed to the park instead. Miss Rossi was waiting. "Your mother told me everything, Linda. I want to help." My heart leaped. "How?" She handed me a bag. Inside were textbooks and assignments. "We'll keep you on track. Study in secret, and I'll check your work whenever I can." Tears of gratitude filled my eyes. "Thank you, Miss Rossi. Thank you so much." And so began my underground education. Each night, after Dad went to bed, I'd pull out my hidden books and study by flashlight. Mom covered for me, saying I was helping her with early morning baking. One night, deep in a chemistry problem, my door creaked open, and I froze in fear. "Linda, It was John. He saw my books and, to my surprise, hugged me. "I've got your back, sis. Dad won't hear a thing from me." But keeping secrets in a small house wasn't easy. Dad started noticing the tired circles under my eyes, the whispered conversations with Mom, the way I jumped when he walked in. One evening, he confronted Mom in the kitchen. I listened from the stairs, heart pounding. "She's up to something, Elena." "What are you hiding?" he demanded. "Nothing, Antonio. She's adjusting, that's all," Mom replied, trying to stay calm. But Dad's voice grew louder. "She's not accepting her place." Mom's voice turned firm, something I'd rarely heard. Her place. Her place is wherever her dreams take her. A loud slam followed. Her dreams? She's a girl. Her place is here, learning to be a wife. Mom didn't back down. "It's the 21st century, Antonio. Women can be more than just wives and mothers." The next morning, the tension in the house was thick. Dad watched me closely, every move feeling like it was under a microscope. That afternoon, while dusting the living room, I heard Dad's heavy footsteps coming upstairs. Panic rose in my throat. "Linda," he shouted. I ran up to my room, only to find him standing there, my hidden textbooks scattered across the bed. "What is this?" he demanded, holding up my physics book. I froze, terrified. "Answer me," he roared. Finding my voice, I stammered, I've been studying." His face twisted in anger. "After everything I've said, you defy me like this?" Mom appeared in the doorway, gasping at the scene. Dad turned to her, furious. "Did you know about this?" Before she could answer, I stepped forward. "Leave her out of this. It's all me." Dad's eyes narrowed. "Well, it ends now." He started gathering my books. "No," I cried, reaching for them. But he was stronger. He stormed downstairs, my heart breaking as I followed, pleading, "Dad, please, don't do this." But it was too late. He tossed my precious books into the fireplace, the flames hungrily devouring my dreams as I collapsed to the floor, sobbing. One thought burned in my mind. This isn't over, not by a long shot. After that night, life became unbearable. Dad watched me like a hawk, barely letting me out of his sight. No more secret studying, no more dreams of becoming a doctor, or so he thought. But Mom, bless her heart, wasn't giving up on me. One night, she slipped into my room, clutching a packet of papers. "It's a scholarship application," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "For the National Science Academy. Miss Rossi helped me get it." My heart raced. "But Dad," I started. "We'll figure it out," she said, determined. "Just fill it out, okay?" For weeks, I poured my heart into that application, crafting every word in secret. When the letter finally came, I could barely contain my excitement. I rushed to Mom. "I got it," I whispered, unable to believe it myself. A full ride. Her eyes filled with joyful tears, but then reality set in. Dad would never allow it. As my 18th birthday approached, I dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, I'd have a chance to leave and start fresh. But Dad had other plans. At dinner one night, he made the announcement. "Linda," he said, setting his fork down, "I've arranged a marriage for you, Mr. Rossi's son." The fork slipped from my hand. "What?" "No. It's done," he said firmly. "The wedding is next month." I looked to Mom, desperate for help. She seemed as shocked as I was. That night, I lay awake, my entire future slipping away, until I heard a knock at my window. It was John. "I heard everything," he whispered, his face full of resolve. "We're getting you out of here." The next day, while Dad was at work, we held a secret meeting. Me, Mom, John, and Miss Rossi. "I have a friend in the city," Miss Rossi explained. "She can take you in until you start at the academy." Mom handed me an envelope. "I've been saving this. It's not much, but it'll help." We planned every detail. The night before the wedding, I'd sneak out, John would drive me to the bus station, and from there, I'd be on my own. When the day finally arrived, I packed my bags and hid them under my bed. As I helped Mom with dinner, my hands shook. "You okay, honey?" she asked, loud enough for Dad to hear. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Just wedding jitters." Dad grunted from his armchair. "You'll be fine. The Rossi boy's a good match." That night, as the house fell silent, I grabbed my bags. But as I opened my door, there stood Dad, blocking my path. "Going somewhere," he growled. My heart stopped. I was just trying to run away," he said, grabbing my arm. "You ungrateful little—" "Let go of me," I shouted, yanking my arm free. The noise woke Mom and John, and they rushed to my side. Antonio, stop this, Mom pleaded. Stay out of this, Elena, he roared. But I stood my ground. I'm leaving, Dad. I won't let you ruin my life. His face twisted with rage. You're throwing away everything I've done for you. Done for me, I laughed bitterly. You've done nothing but hold me back. He raised his hand, but John caught his arm. Don't you dare, my brother growled. I clutched my bags tightly. I'm going to college. I'm going to be a doctor, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. Dad's voice dropped, cold as ice. If you walk out that door, don't ever come back. I looked at Mom, tears glistening in her eyes, then at John, standing tall beside me, and finally back at Dad. This man I once admired, now a stranger. Goodbye, Dad, I said softly and turned to walk out into the night. As John drove me to the bus station, a mix of fear and excitement churned within me. I was leaving everything I knew behind, but for the first time, I was finally free. You've got this, sis, John said, hugging me tightly before I boarded. As the bus pulled away, I watched my old life fade in the rearview mirror, my heart pounding with anticipation. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt a deep, unshakable hope. My journey was just beginning, and nothing could stop me now. University life was everything I dreamed of. Late night study sessions, heated debates with classmates, and the thrill of learning something new every day. I was in my element. My internship at City General was grueling but rewarding, and one night, when a critical patient came in, I instinctively jumped in to assist. Afterward, the attending physician patted my shoulder. Quick thinking, Dr. Linda, she said. You've got a bright future ahead of you. Those words meant everything. A few months later, John called with unexpected news. Linda, Mom left Dad. She's staying with me for now. My heart swelled with pride. How is she? She's scared but happy, he replied. She said you gave her the courage to leave. As for Dad, his machine shop was struggling without Mom's bookkeeping skills. A twist of fate I couldn't ignore. Graduation day came, and as I stood in my cap and gown, diploma in hand, I thought of the girl I once was, trapped, afraid, yet determined to fight for a different life. Congratulations, Dr. Linda, the dean said, shaking my hand. The residency program at Mayo Clinic will be lucky to have you. Later that week, John called again. Linda, you won't believe this. Dad's business went under and he's being investigated for tax fraud. A mixture of shock, a twinge of satisfaction, and even a hint of pity passed through me. Years went by and I became a successful surgeon. My dream was now a reality. Then, out of the blue, a letter arrived from Dad. In it, he wrote about his regrets and how he wanted to make amends. As I read his words, I felt nothing. That chapter of my life was closed. I replied simply, I'm glad you've realized your mistakes. I hope you find peace, but I've moved on. Today, as I stand on the stage of my old high school, looking out at a sea of young faces, I share the lesson I learned the hard way. Dreams aren't just for boys, I tell them. Don't let anyone dictate what you can or cannot do. Your future is yours to shape. As I speak, I spot a familiar face in the back. Miss Rossi, older now but still beaming with pride. I smile, thinking of the journey that brought me here. It wasn't easy, but it was worth every struggle, every tear, every moment of doubt. To all the girls out there facing their own battles, keep fighting, keep dreaming. Your story isn't over yet. Now, let's talk. Was Linda right to cut ties with her father completely, or should she have given him a chance to reconcile? Is there a point where toxic family members don't deserve forgiveness, no matter how much they claim to have changed? Your take could help someone in a similar situation. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm Hazel, 28, a fitness trainer. It's not just work, it's my passion. I thrive on helping people transform and find their inner strength. But let's switch gears from work to family. I'm the oldest of 3. My dad and I are close. He's my rock. Then there's Mark, my 25-year-old brother, the family charmer. Though he has a gambling problem, he keeps brushing under the rug. And my sister Harper, 23, who's still in college and looks up to Mark like he can do no wrong. Last night, we gathered for one of Mom's big family dinners, complete with her famous lasagna. Everything seemed perfect until Mark announced, I have some news. His grin stretched ear to ear. Cassandra and I are engaged. Cassandra is the socialite he's been seeing from a family with serious wealth. Oh, honey, That's wonderful. Mom beamed, hugging him tightly, while Harper squealed with excitement. I offered my congratulations, but something felt off. When I glanced at Dad, he looked tense, a faint frown on his face. Dad, you okay? I asked. He forced a smile, nodding. Of course, sweetheart. Just surprised. I knew him better than that, though. So, any idea when the big day is? I tried to lighten the mood. Mark shrugged, saying Cassandra was eyeing a destination wedding, something tropical like the Maldives or Bora Bora. I nearly choked on my water. Wow, that's quite the plan. Mark just winked. Don't worry, sis. Cassandra's family is handling most of it. But Dad's frown only deepened. Are you sure about this, Mark? His voice was unusually stern. Harper jumped in. Dad, come on, be happy for him. The tension was thick, but Mom quickly steered the conversation to wedding details. Meanwhile, Dad kept sending Mark pointed looks, as if trying to communicate something only Mark ignored. After dinner, as I helped Mom clean up, I couldn't shake the unease. Hazel, honey, she asked, noticing my silence. Are you alright? I gave a half-hearted smile. Just tired, Mom. 2 weeks later, things took a turn. Dad collapsed at work from stress and landed in the hospital. While Mom stayed by his side, I decided to organize his papers at home. That's when I found the bank statements and loan documents. My hands shook as I realized the truth. Dad had been secretly selling assets, our vacation home, his classic car collection, even dipping into my college fund, all to cover Mark's gambling debts. When Mom came home, I confronted her, waving the papers. Did you know about this? She sighed, sinking into a chair. Hazel, honey, we were just trying to protect the family. If word got out, it would ruin us. And this is better, selling everything we own. My voice was thick with anger and hurt. Just then, Mark and Harper walked in. Mark's face paled when he saw the documents in my hand. Care to explain these, Mark? I asked, unable to keep the anger out of my voice. Hazel, I can explain. Don't hazel me. Dad's in the hospital because of you. Harper finally spoke up, her tone accusing. Why are you being so hard on him? He said he'd change. Are you serious? He's gambled away our family's future. I snapped back, stunned at her loyalty. You think I'm jealous? Jealous of his ability to destroy everything. Mom stepped between us, trying to calm the storm, but I could see the damage had already been done. I looked around the room. Mom's pleading eyes, Mark's hollow promises, Harper's misplaced loyalty, and felt utterly alone. I can't do this, I muttered, grabbing my keys. I need some air. As I drove, my thoughts raced. How had things gotten so twisted? How was I now the bad guy just for speaking the truth? A heavy weight of betrayal settled on my chest. My phone buzzed with messages from Mom and Harper, but I ignored them. I needed time to think, to figure out my next steps. One thing was certain, things couldn't go on like this. Somehow, I found myself at the hospital, sitting by Dad's bed. He was asleep, looking older and more fragile than ever before. I gently took his hand, whispering, I'm so sorry, Dad. I should have seen this sooner. But I promise I'll fix this somehow. Watching the steady rise and fall of his chest, I made a decision. No matter how hard it would be, I was going to break this toxic cycle for Dad's sake, for mine, and yes, even for Mark's. It's been a month since Dad went into the hospital. Despite our hopes, he never came home. The day he passed was the darkest of my life. Standing in that sterile hospital room, listening to the machines go silent, a part of me felt like it died with him. The funeral was a haze of black clothes and empty condolences. Mom was a wreck. Harper couldn't stop crying, and Mark just looked lost. Cassandra was there too, her flawless makeup barely hiding her discomfort. A week later, we gathered for the reading of Dad's will. I thought it might offer some closure, maybe even a few answers. Instead, it delivered one more heartbreak. I'm sorry, the lawyer said, clearly uncomfortable. Most of the estate has already been liquidated. There's very little left. Mom gasped. Harper looked confused. But Mark couldn't meet anyone's eyes. What about my college fund? I asked, though I already knew the answer. The lawyer shook his head. I'm afraid that's gone, along with your personal savings account. The room spun as I tried to process it all. Everything I'd worked for, every dollar I'd saved, gone to feed Mark's addiction. Cassandra stood up abruptly, looking at Mark. Can we talk outside? She asked in a strained voice. We all watched as she and Mark stepped out. When he returned, he was alone, holding his engagement ring tightly in his fist. She's gone, he mumbled. said she can't marry someone with financial issues. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for him, but anger and hurt were too overpowering. Harper, always the loyal sister, rushed to his side. "This is your fault, Hazel," she spat. "If you hadn't exposed everything, Mark would still be engaged. You've ruined his life." I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. I ruined his life, he ruined all of ours. "Wake up, Harper." Mom tried to intervene, her voice tired. "Girls, please, your father wouldn't want this." But I was done. Done with excuses, done with enabling, done with pretending everything was fine. "No, Mom," I said firmly. "Dad wouldn't want any of this. He wouldn't want his life's work gambled away or his family falling apart. And he wouldn't want us to keep pretending everything's okay when it's not." I turned to Mark. "You need help, real help, not more excuses." Then to Harper, "And you need to grow up and see the truth." Finally, I looked at Mom. "And you have to stop protecting him from the consequences of his actions. It's not helping anyone." I grabbed my purse and headed to the door. "Where are you going?" Mom called after me. I paused, hand on the doorknob. "To build a life that doesn't revolve around cleaning up other people's messes." As I walked out, I heard Harper yelling, Mark pleading, and Mom crying. But for the first time in weeks, I felt lighter. The next few months were tough. I threw myself into work, picking up extra clients and even starting group classes at the gym. Each dollar I earned felt like a small victory, a step toward reclaiming my independence. I moved out of the family home and into a tiny studio apartment. It wasn't much, but it was mine. No drama, no lies, no more late-night rescues. Mom called frequently at first, then less so, and finally only on occasion. Harper sent angry texts, which turned to tearful voicemails, until even those faded into silence. Mark. Last I heard, he was in rehab. I hoped it would stick this time. One evening, I sat on my small balcony watching the sunset. The pain was still there, the betrayal still stung. But I was healing. Slowly, surely, I was finding my way back to myself. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. My future, one I'd build on my own terms, free from the toxic patterns of the past. 2 years have flown by, and I barely recognize my life anymore. I'm standing in my own fitness studio, rise above, watching my clients push through their workouts. It's everything I'd ever dreamed of and more. "Great job, everyone," I call out as the class wraps up. "Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about being better than you were yesterday." As I'm wiping down equipment, my phone buzzes with a news alert. My heart drops when I see the headline. "Local man arrested for fraud and embezzlement." There's Mark's face, haggard and defeated, as he's led away in handcuffs. Apparently, he'd been siphoning money from his workplace to fuel his gambling habit. Some things never change. I'm still processing the news when another message pops up. It's from Harper. "Hazel, I know it's been a while. I'm so sorry for everything. Can we talk?" My finger hovers over the reply button. Part of me wants to hear her out, but a larger part remembers the pain, the accusations, her blind loyalty to Mark. After a long pause, I type out a response. "Harper, I appreciate your apology. I hope you're doing well, but I'm not ready to revisit the past. I wish you the best, but I need to maintain the boundaries I've set. Take care." It's not easy, but it feels right. I've worked hard to build this new life, and I'm not willing to risk it by falling back into old patterns. Later that week, I'm having coffee with my friend Sarah, who casually mentioned seeing Mom at the grocery store. "She looked pretty rough," Sarah says, stirring her drink. "Mentioned something about financial troubles. I think it has to do with your brother's legal fees." A pang of guilt hits me, quickly followed by frustration. Even now, Mark's actions are hurting the people around him. That night, I lie awake thinking about Mom, struggling to make ends meet. But I know that if I step in directly, I'll get pulled back into the family drama. Then an idea strikes. I grab my laptop and start searching. Soon, I find what I'm looking for: a support organization for families affected by gambling addiction. I make an anonymous donation, enough to cover a year's worth of counseling and financial planning services. It's not a solution, but it's something, a way to help without compromising my own well-being. Weeks pass, and life goes on. My business continues to thrive, and I even start mentoring young trainers. One day, as I'm locking up the studio, I catch my reflection in the window. I barely recognize the woman staring back at me, confident, successful, at peace. I think back to that family dinner 2 years ago when Mark announced his engagement. How different things were then, how naive I was. But as I walk home under the setting sun, I realize I don't regret the journey. Every heartache, every setback, every tough decision led me here to this moment, this life I've built for myself. I unlock the door to my apartment, bigger now with a view of the city, and smile. On my fridge, there's a quote I put up when I first moved in: "The only way out is through." And that's exactly what I did. I went through the storm, faced the hard truths, made the tough choices, and came out stronger on the other side. As I settle in for the evening, a sense of calm washes over me. I may have lost the family I was born into, but I've gained something far more valuable: self-respect, inner peace, and the knowledge that I can weather any storm. So, what do you think? Was I right to cut ties with my family, or should I have stayed to help them? What would you have done in my shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments below.